that's actually what you deal with every day as a ride operator, working with those people, experiencing their emotions, and that can be on a roller coaster, but that can also be on a bench where people enjoy a view, or it can be so many different things. But in the end, it comes back to emotions.
Welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast, where we discuss the latest trends and challenges facing the attractions industry today.
We chat with some of the top leaders in the field and provide resources that will help develop your career in this great industry.
I am Josh Liebman. I am obsessed with the guest experience and helping attractions make that their top priority for success.
And I'm Matt Heller. I am passionate about organizational effectiveness, leadership development, and employee engagement.
Now sit upright, hold on tight, and get ready for the Attraction Pros podcast.
Hey, Matt, how's it going?
It's going fantastically, Josh. How are you?
Doing great. Always love to hear that. Fantastic. Question for you.
Giddy up.
Have you ever been to EMEA?
I feel like there's many different ways to answer that question. I've been to Europe. I've never been to the Middle East, and I've never been to Africa.
That's funny. I asked this knowing that, like, very fresh in your mind is trip to Ireland that you took.
Yes.
But the reason why I ask is you kind of just said, like, well, I've been to 1/3 of EMEA, right? When people across, I would say, like, global corporate, like large corporations, or in this case, associations who do business all over the world, need to break it up into geographic chunks. So like North America, like LATAM, Latin America, EMEA, APAC, the Asia Pacific region. And EMEA, is so interesting because it encompasses so much. Like you said, it encompasses Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. So it's two entire continents, and I guess what you would consider a subcontinent, right? And what's interesting is when we think of this through the lens of the attractions industry, those are three very different markets combined into one region.
They really are. And what our guest gets to talk about today is how one is sort of a mature market, one is, I would say, somewhat mature emerging, and one is really in its infancy.
Yeah. And you can probably guess which one of those are each of those. So we know the oldest operating amusement park in the world is Bakken, which is just outside of Copenhagen. And it's been operating since the 1500s. And then you've got, the Middle East, you've got Dubai and Abu Dhabi and Saudi Arabia, which just in the last 10 to 15 years, and I would say a lot of that's been accelerated just even in more recent years, of just how much growth the industry has seen from there. And then in Africa, there is an attractions industry, but by comparison to Europe and even in the Middle East, like you said, it's very much in its infancy. So it's cool that we get to actually kind of dive into a little bit of what that might look like in the future and what potential predictions there are and what part of the industry, because we're talking to Peter van de Schans. He is the executive director and vice president of IAAPA's EMEA region. And he said it might not be the obvious key players that when you think of IAAPA and when you think of certain regions, and in particular when we talk about Africa, as far as what might go there. So there might not be destination theme park resorts, or at least perhaps not as many of them, but we know that the amount of tourism and the amount of opportunities that fall under the IAAPA umbrella or the attractions industry umbrella as a whole, that there's plenty of opportunity for that market.
Well, I think what's really interesting is you really have to look at that word attractions, right? Because what are we doing? We're attracting people to some sort of experience. And as Peter likes to talk about, to create and to sell some sort of emotion. It was interesting. And I think we're going to talk about this on an upcoming episode, but my trip to Ireland, I went to a lot of different places that I didn't think of at first as an attraction. But when I walked in, hey, there's a place to sell a ticket. Hey, there's a tour guide. Hey, there's, something that they're telling you that you didn't know before. Oh, by the way, there's a gift shop also, right? There's a food and beverage component. So when you think about that, it could be so many different things. It doesn't have to have a roller coaster. It doesn't have to have a dark ride. It doesn't have to have an animal collection. It could be so many different things. Peter talked about a cave experience, where you could go have dinner in a cave or something of that nature. And so when you think about, again, the way that we as human beings experience different attractions, experience different facilities, we do so in a way that we want to share that experience with someone else. Typically, not like you and I, we can go to a park by ourselves and probably have a very good time. But a lot of times, we're going with friends, we're going with family, and we want to have that experience that we can share and we can relive. And you can do that in so many different ways. So whether it's the emerging markets in Africa, whether it's things that are somewhat emerging or somewhat mature in the Middle East, or the very mature attractions in Europe specifically, there's really, no pun intended, a whole world out there of different attractions that could probably fall under the IAAPA umbrella that most people don't even think about.
Mm-hmm. And one of those things that all these attractions need to operate is people.
Right.
And Peter also talks about the people aspect of the business and the way that IAAPA, in particular in the EMEA region, is supporting young professionals as well as students to be able to encourage them to join the industry. And, we even talk a little bit of the staffing challenges that have happened over the last couple of years and looking at why people might join the industry or why they might not join the industry and all the alternative options that those beginning their career really have. And we talk about ways of being able to address those challenges. One of the other things that we talk about too, actually, is one of my favorite topics, which is service recovery. And I brought it up because I went to the IAAPA Europe Expo last year, which was in London, and there was I would say a shining example of a service recovery situation, very much orchestrated by Peter, that occurred with all the attendees that happened. And the reason why I wanted to bring it up is not to shine a light on perhaps service failures that occurred, but the way that IAAPA addressed it and the way that Peter phrased the messaging and the recovery and even the compensation with it as well is what we should all be doing. And Peter even said we're hosting those who have a passion for hospitality. We need to deliver that back to them. So it was a great service recovery story, which I always love to hear those and share those as well. So I'm excited that we got to talk about that too.
Absolutely. And I think it's a great example of leading by example, right? Because when you think about who's providing the best service, you may look at a particular company. You may think of Disney or Universal or someplace else that you've had really, really great experience. But when you think about it, if IAAPA is not providing a great service, right, then that really should be the benchmark, right? They should be treating the constituents the same way the constituents would want to treat the guests, and so on and so on. So I think it's really great that the reason I'm bringing this up is because I think it ties back to his operator experience, right? Yes. Bringing that to the forefront. So this is what happened when he was the GM of a zoo, or he was back being a ride operator or a ride supervisor. And you learn those lessons along the way. You learn those people lessons. You learn what people are really looking for. And it sounds like that has really become sort of his MO as the representative of IAAPA in the EMEA region.
Matt, are you trying to say that this industry is just all about people?
Well, if I didn't say that, I need to go back and re-say it, because yes, it's all about people.
And today's person is Peter van der Schans, Executive Director and Vice President of IAAPA EMEA, Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And I'd say let's get right to this interview.
Hey, Peter, welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast. How you doing today?
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. I'm doing well. Nice weather in the Netherlands. We don't get that often, so very happy to be here.
Very good. Very good. Well, we wish we could be enjoying that weather with you in person, but we're doing this over Zoom. So, Peter, could you give us a quick rundown of your history in case people don't know who you are?
Yes, absolutely. I think looking at the industry and my passion for the industry, it started, as many of us actually, when I was just a little kid. I remember actually when we were on holiday in Lake Garda in Italy. I think I was 7 or 8, and I was collecting all the park maps from Garda Land and from Caneva World, and basically everything I could get my hands on to I don't know, collect anything that had to do with our industry. Then I always wanted to be a pilot, actually. When I was 17, I did selections as well, and everything was fine, thankfully. But on the other hand, they felt it was a little too young at that stage, which made me had to wait 4 more years to actually apply again. And at that time, I worked as a ride operator at Six Flags Holland, and I loved every minute of it. And as a teenager, your goal is set on being a pilot. So my world fell apart, of course. But loving that so much and thinking back also on those days when I was a kid, made me think maybe I should follow this direction actually, and then make it a career out of it. And that's where I studied leisure management. Then moved into a supervisor position at that time Walibi World. And from there on, I actually had different management positions in Slagharen, Toverland, Keukenhof. I worked for a cinema company as well, little step aside, but on the other hand, also very familiar. And right before I started with IAAPA, I was general manager of a zoo in the Netherlands, Dierenrijk. But then Jacob was promoted to COO, and I congratulated him. But on the other hand, I also thought, hey, this means there's an opportunity open. I applied, and that's where I am now. About 1 year and 2 months, I believe, at IAAPA as the executive director and vice president for the EMEA region.
Excellent. So you talk about when the position became available, and you congratulated Jacob on his promotion, identified that. But would love to actually maybe even take that maybe a step backward or so towards throughout your time in the industry. You kind of talked about your career path at Six Flags, and then sort of moving up from there. At what point did you become introduced to IAAPA for the first time and get involved, even just from the operator side?
That's a good question, actually. I don't think that was, yeah, actually it was at Six Flags already. Not so much, I think, and that's also what we see as our biggest challenge right now. If you look at how IAAPA works, a company is a member, and then basically everyone that works for that company can join the roster and have access to everything that IAAPA has to offer. And from IAAPA's standpoint of view, we would love that if you have a company with 500 employees, that all 500 actually has that access. But I think as many companies have, we, as a ride operator, I never really thought about it, actually. It was more when I started working in Toverland, where you get more into management positions and connect with other parks. First started on national association level, and then you get to know the international association as well, and starting visiting the trade show and some events. So there was more at the time where I worked at Toverland as park manager, and we wanted to connect more with different parks, with other operators, learn from them. So that's actually where my ball started rolling.
Very cool. And now, obviously, IAAPA is global, right?
Yes.
Excuse me, around the entire world, and you focus on the EMEA region. Can you kind of talk a little bit about what that is? Maybe break down the EMEA and
Absolutely.
help anybody who doesn't understand or doesn't know about that region and what it is that you do over there.
Absolutely. EMEA stands for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So I always like to see it as 3 regions in one, actually. Within IAAPA, it's one region, but obviously there are so many differences within those regions already, that the approach actually is more 3 regions into one. If you look at Europe, for example, it's a very, very mature market, which has a lot of history. We have parks like Bakken, who's been around for hundreds of years. But also IAAPA-wise, Blackpool Pleasure Beach, they celebrate their 100th anniversary with IAAPA this year. So it's a very mature market where we operate in Europe. Then we have the Middle East, actually rapidly developing. If you look at the Emirates and maybe Qatar, it's a sort of set market right now, growing into that mature area. But Saudi, for example, is just starting, and how actually it's so interesting to see what is going on there. And and what their needs are, they're completely different from what we see in Europe. And then we have Africa, where we are actually having the opportunity to, I'm not saying we were too late in the Middle East, but I feel that we've could have done a bit better with being more on time. For example, in the Middle East, we want to expand our presence. We're opening an office in Dubai at this time. We're recruiting actually our first employee to open that office right now. We're going to do more in the Middle East with events. We're going to do a ride safety report in the Middle East. So we're actually stepping up right now on that area. And my goal is actually with Africa to have that approach maybe before the big boom starts. I know it will happen, and we don't know if it's going to be tomorrow or maybe in 10 years or in 20 years, but there will be development in Africa within the next probably 10, 20 years. And it's our goal to be ready for that and to have our plans and presence actually ready before that starts, so we can support and help where we can.
Curious, would love to actually talk a little bit more about Africa and that part as part of the EMEA region, or kind of, you said these three distinct sub-regions within kind of the context of EMEA. Yeah. I know you said it's developing, in the next, we're not sure, exactly how many years. What type of development? Is it amusement parks? Is it zoos and aquariums? Is it water? Like what part of the industry are you seeing sort of maybe these like?
It's a very interesting question, because you see already within Europe, within the Middle East, and within Africa that there are differences there. For example, if you look at our Middle East Trade Summit that we had in Riyadh in Saudi, we had over 800 attendees. And if you look at the types of companies that are visited us, it was also a financial district, for example. And then you would think, why is there a financial district on an IAAPA event? What do they have to do with leisure? Then it turns out that they want to develop an FEC inside that financial district. So you see already that there's a sort of gray zone that might not be the obvious theme park that is our member. In Africa, obviously, we see a lot of nature reserves, safari parks, those types of attractions, a cable car on the Table Mountain, for example, in Cape Town. It's very different. Also, I just learned about a show cave association where they have 5,000 members in Africa, where you have caves where you can walk, or caves where you have dinners, caves where they perform shows. All those are also visitor attractions. So it's a good question, actually, and I don't know if the answer is final, because we learn something every day. But in the end, it's not always the obvious theme parks.
Right.
So, Peter, I'd love to kind of combine a little bit of our conversation so far. We've talked a little bit about your background, and I'm sure we'll get more into that as we go along as well, but also with the role at IAAPA. How has your background, your operations background, your theme park background, how has that helped you now in what you get to do with IAAPA?
I think in the end, if you look at what I learned when I was a ride operator and also as a manager of parks, that in the end, it's all about emotions. That's what we do. We don't sell a product, we sell emotions as an industry. And the picture that I wanted to show you, and hopefully can show you now, is showing that exactly. It's young, it's old, it's laughs, it's fear, it's everything that we do comes back to that emotion. And that's actually what you deal with every day as a ride operator, working with those people experiencing their emotions. And that can be on a roller coaster, but that can also be on a bench where people enjoy a view, or it can be so many different things. But in the end, it comes back to emotions.
Yeah. I would love, actually, if we can just even expand and talk more on this. We don't sell a product, we sell emotions. How do you, I would say, maybe work in that philosophy into your day-to-day role, the way that you're serving members and you're serving constituents of IAAPA, of kind of using that perhaps as the anchor with all these ancillary things that people need to do, of all the things we focus on, and all the things that that they are doing business with suppliers, and some of those are tangible things, the rides, the attractions, the shows, the food, all of that leading into the output, which is the emotion.
Yeah, good question. And some of it comes natural, I think, out of that experience you have from the parks, and some of that is also being a good facilitator of our expos, of our events, where we also want to wow our guests, I still say, our attendees at the expos, our attendees at the events. I think those emotions for me changed during my work at IAAPA, not into having an emotion from a ride or from an experience, but actually from sharing that knowledge that you have, from sharing best practices, where you see that a certain park actually is learning from another park, or that you see that a certain individual can join our industry that they are passionate about, where we connect them with the right persons to take their first steps into the industry. I think it changed into a different sort of emotion, I would say, than what you see in the theme parks. But I think in the end, also there, also in our events, we always want to set a good example, of course, with our host, but also IAAPA itself. I mean, we share the best practices. We should at least lead by example, I would say.
Well, and you said that your emotions changed, and I'm curious, one of the things I saw on LinkedIn for you said you used to wander around parks as a kid, and now you still wander around them as an adult. Has that process changed, or is it pretty much still the same? Like, are you looking at different things? Are you thinking different things now as an adult, and specifically as a member of IAAPA or an employee of IAAPA?
Different things, I would say, here, because on one hand, it changes when you become an adult, that other things getting more important, I would say. I don't have kids myself, but if I walk around in a park with my nephew and niece from my sister, then I get to enjoy their laughs and their experience, actually. Or if you go to a theme park with someone that never been to the park, and you want to actually let them have that experience and see their emotions. So it's I would say, becoming an adult, it's more about other emotion or someone else's emotion than that you're excited to experience it yourself. It's still there, obviously. If there's a new coaster opening up, I'm always up to test it. But I would say that changed if you become an adult. Working for IAAPA, it changed a bit, where you see examples that you're very positive about, or that you think like, hey, so this is something we need to share. So you look a bit more with that background. But I think the biggest change actually was when you start working for the industry. And that's where it becomes tricky. If you're a fan and you actually always enjoy the parks in a certain way, you get to see the back office, and you get to see everything that is needed to run that park. And that also means that whenever you visit a park the next time, you will look through those eyes, and you will see how many ride operators are working on that roller coaster. And you think that's either too less or too much, or it's completely different from that on, or from then on. And that changes the perspective. It's not that you cannot enjoy a park anymore, but it becomes a gray area where it's fun and leisure and work at the same time, which also is positive, that you don't ever have to actually work for a day in your life, because your work is that much fun. So
Yeah. Totally agree with that mindset. Just last week, Matt and I were visiting a park, and we were riding rides and standing on the ride platform, and we were observing and talking about the operations and looking at it from that eye. And then the gate opened,
you don't
and
experience
the ride. So yeah.
You don't experiencing the flawless operation. You're actually looking at it and absorbing it. It's
Right.
it's yeah.
Yeah. So like Matt indicated, we took a couple of your questions from your LinkedIn profile, and there was something else in your bio that I wanted to bring up, and it's a quote that you have, and I use this quote all the time. So the quote is from Walt Disney, and he says, "You can dream, create, design, and build the most wonderful place in the world, but it requires people to make the dream a reality." That quote means a lot to me, and I can think of just how it applies so well to so many aspects of our industry and what we do. But I would love to hear, why do you have that quote in your profile? What does that quote mean for you?
I think it's literally true, and I think it's also something that it shows also that emotion that we sell. You can still build the biggest coaster in the world to actually attract people to the park, but sometimes it's the interaction with a guest or an interaction with another person that is actually the most memorable experience that you'll have that day. And we're all human beings, and human beings like to connect, and we like to share those emotions. And if we don't have our employees up front and have a certain freedom or power to fix things if things go wrong. For example, Disney is very good at that, where an employee can in front line can fix a lot of issues that guests might experience. If you don't have that set, it can ruin your experience at the day. You can literally have the best park in the world, but if your staff is not there to back it up or even make it better, because if you do it well, it makes the product better, then you're nowhere.
Absolutely. I love how you said we're all human beings. That's something that Josh and I talk a lot about. You know, when it comes to employees and guests, we're all human beings and we all want to be treated with respect. And, you know, we're all looking for those emotions and things of that nature. So I love how you phrase that in that answer. I'm also curious if we could talk a little bit about sort of the giving people an idea of what it takes to put on an expo, right? We know that the Expo Europe is coming up in Vienna, and would love to hear maybe some things that people can expect from that, or even some of the things you do to prep for that people may not see from the outside.
It's also a very good question. It takes a lot to begin with. It's not easy, but it's I think I lead a team of 15 people in our region, and that are salespeople that actually sell the space on the floor. That is our education manager putting up a kick-ass conference program for attendees. That is our membership department that is involved with having our members there. It's anything you can think of basically comes from our team. We're supported a lot actually by our headquarters in Orlando, but Expo Europe is mainly led by the region itself. Then, of course, it's easy on one hand to copy and paste a show and do it next year in Amsterdam and the year after in Barcelona. But if you only look at those locations, for example, right now we're working on 2027. All other shows in the past or the years that are in front of 2027 are already signed. So it takes a lot of time up front to even come up with a location and to make sure the halls that we need are available. That is a membership process as well. We come up with quite a few ideas and suggestions, and then we talk to different committees and different members to decide in the end where we go. In the end, it's a board decision that actually approves that decision, which makes it also a member decision. And then what do we do? For example, if we look at Vienna for this year, it's very, very careful what I'm going to say now, but we're about 17,000 square meters at this time, which is 600 square meters less than Paris, which is our record from 2019. I'm confident actually that we'll break the record. We still have 3.5 months to go. So now I've said it on record. I can't go back anymore. It's either going to be close to or just above or just under our record show in Paris. Then if you look at what's new, we have actually a lot of new things, and I'm very excited about that. We're going to have a job fair for the first time at our expo, where we will connect with local education institutes to get them into the show, to get them experience our industry, and try to see if we can touch a few hearts that are actually industry lovers but don't know it yet. The good thing of our show is that we travel to different cities in Europe, and we always get the comment that we don't do enough with that, actually. So new this year is also a host city day. It's a 3-track event where we separated it in F&B, in culture, and in retail. So we actually go into the city and see what is special about Vienna on F&B level. So if you're an F&B manager from a park, it's good to attend that event. If you're a retail manager in a park, then you should join the retail track, and so on. We're going to have a completely new opening ceremony. Last year in London, also due to the passing of the Queen, unfortunately, we had to adjust here and there some of our program, which made the opening ceremony not the festive one that we actually want to have. So this year in Vienna, we're going to do really opening ceremony 2.0. Going to have more Edu tours. We always used to have one Edu tour. Now we're going to have one full day Edu tour and 2 smaller ones, one at the Zoo of Vienna and one at Praterpark. We're going to have a diversity workshop, also new. And plus all those events actually is also all the set events that we always do, like Safety Day, Sustainability Day, basically all the events that people know us for already. Then also on the show floor, we have a lot of innovation where we actually have a new innovation stage, which is a stage on the actual show floor. So usually the conference area is behind a wall or in a different location. That is still the case for Vienna, but we also add an innovation stage where we have shorter pitches of presentations of just 20 minutes, fast pace, and on the show floor, a very open design as well. So we actually try to move a bit of those educational sessions on the floor and have more stuff going on the trade floor. We're going to have a safety corner where a safety expert is always present, where you can ask questions, where you just walk in and ask your question that you have. So we want to have a low barrier approach on safety and see if that works and see if that brings our members something. And yeah, those are all the things that are new. And on top of that, we do the things that we've always done.
Sounds like quite a lot to be a jam-packed.
It actually is quite a lot this year, yeah.
I have a question about last year's event, if that's okay, in London. You talked briefly how the opening ceremony had to be changed due to the Queen's passing, which, by the way, was a crazy time to be in London, just to begin with, of just seeing just everyone in mourning. It was between her passing and her funeral, so it was a lot of people I know went actually saw her lying in state, as you know, while they were there just for the IAAPA Expo. But this actually has to do. And this ties in with the previous question before that, where you were talking about the importance of the people to deliver the experience, but also to fix issues when they go wrong. So you had the event at the Museum of London, Docklands, and I loved it. Mainly because of the people that were there, and it was a wonderful event. But people commented it was a little warm, it was a little crowded, and perhaps maybe it wasn't exactly to the expectation it was supposed to be. What I remember most was not any issues at the event, but it was the email that you sent out shortly after that. And the reason why I think I want to bring it up is because I think it's just such a shining example of how the industry can and should respond to perhaps when things don't go 100%. Can you talk just a little bit about maybe that thought process and maybe the discussions that led to what I saw as being an incredible service recovery situation?
Yeah. Well, first of all, like you said, we had the opening reception, our biggest network event at the Museum of Docklands. And what we always see if we visit a member, for example, is that they go above and beyond to make a good impression. The opposite is true. If we don't visit a member, then we're just one of the clients. So to start with that, if we go to a member, we know we always will put on a good show because they support us. They know what we bring to the table and they feel it's important. It was a combination actually of many things where they didn't seem pretty much ready for the number of guests that we brought in, which was obvious from the beginning on. We didn't have enough food. It was hard to get to food, actually, to get drinks. There were long lines, but it all began actually, and that turned out to be because of the passing of the Queen again. We hired buses to move our attendees from the venue to the venue of the opening reception. Those buses were also reserved in the case if the Queen passed to support the funeral and all the things around that. So we actually had less buses than we ordered. There was nothing we could do at that time. Everything was booked. There was literally nothing we could do. And they informed us 30 minutes before the actual buses should arrive. So I don't mean to push it to other people, but it wasn't ideal, so to say. So that also meant that a lot of people actually came in very late and only experienced about 1 hour or 1 hour and a half. London was very expensive, and also the ticket for the opening reception was very expensive, therefore more than what we usually had on the mainland of Europe. So everything combined actually made that it just wasn't a good experience. And like I said, I think IAAPA should at least lead by example. We host events for Disney, we host events for Universal, we host events for all the parks in the world, basically, that do hospitality with passion, that do hospitality at the best that we can think of. So if we host those people, we should at least be on that level. And if we cannot deliver that, then we did something wrong, and we did. So that's exactly why we came back together. First of all, during that evening, we tried to extend the hours as much as we can. That only happened for 45 minutes. Unfortunately, that was the absolute max, and that took me and the team almost the complete evening to get that done. But in the end, it was only 45 minutes. So we simply felt it wasn't enough. So that's why we came together like, hey, this was not to our standard, and our members should not be the one taking that blame. So that's why we came up with that email where we offered 50% off for the next opening reception in Vienna. And that's going to be at the member at Praterpark. And it's very excited to go there, actually.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Peter. I was not a part of that, but Josh mentioning that to me really brings up how you as IAAPA are also operating as an attraction, right? Because people are coming to see you, right? Coming to see IAAPA, and you've got so many different facets of the operation that you have to be responsible for. And then to your point, if things don't go right, you have to make it right. So I appreciate you sharing those examples. One of the things that piqued my interest in the previous answer about the Vienna Expo was you mentioned a job fair, which from an HR perspective, I'm like, I want to learn more. But first of all, can you tell us a little bit more about that? And then also maybe as a part two to that question, what are your philosophies in kind of cultivating and helping young professionals in the attractions industry kind of move up and learn about different career paths?
Yeah. Well, the job fair actually, in the end, was an idea of one of the interns that we had at IAAPA last year. We did a research on how we can approach that, on how we can set this up in a way that what we don't want to do is to have company A coming to the expo and company B takes that person out of company A. That's not the goal. We want to have more people in the industry. So the setup is that we connect with the local institutes of education, so universities, other institutes that are at least have a touch point of our industry. So it's either hospitality, but also tech. We often, if we talk about education institutes, we look at hospitality, but I think tech is just as important. And I think we should definitely step up on that level to do more. We connect with them and see if we can bring them in, if we can tease them on the last day of the expo, show them what the industry is about, having a few companies represented in that job fair, talking about what they do, what it is that makes our industry so special. Like I said before, touch their hearts, try to see if we can persuade them into a career in our industry. I think it's now more relevant than ever, actually. We see the staff shortage. If I talk to universities, they're actually quite worried. They saw a drop in attendance of hospitality studies that is up to 40% on some universities. So that's insane. And if we don't do anything about that, then we're going to suffer from it a lot. So it's our job actually to step up on that and see what we can do to make this better. Also, I think the next question was more about young professionals, right?
Yeah, young professionals kind of in general, maybe supporting their career growth.
We do quite a few things, but I think we should also step up there. My vision would be ideally that it's integrated into our current programs, and that we don't have a special young professional division or a special young professional event, but in the end that they are welcome, and they are always welcome, but that they feel welcome enough to join all the events that we offer. I don't think we're there yet. So right now we do host special events for young professionals. We did one in October in Antwerp, for example. But also our mentor-mentee program is a very good example where young professionals can sign up as a mentee and they get assigned a mentor from the industry where you connect one-on-one with them and try to see if you can help them during their career path. And also a mentor right now, so it's a quite fulfilling role actually. So if people want to sign up, please join. I think in the end, we see that also a lot of committees involve young professionals now, having a dedicated seat for young professionals where they can join the committee maybe for 1 or 2 years to get a taste of it and then actually move into that normal seat, so to say. So we do a lot. I feel we can do better and make them feel welcome actually at all other events, so that it becomes more of a natural thing that they are there. On the other hand, they do have different needs, so I think we should also keep those young professional events that we have during the expo, where we connect them with industry leaders and bring them those opportunities as well.
Yeah. I believe Matt and I have both taken on mentees with the mentor-mentee program, and I think I can speak for both of us. Say we speak very highly of that, and that it's great for the mentee, but it's great for the mentor as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. At the time of this episode's release, I am in my final countdown of being considered an IAAPA young professional by IAAPA's definition. And it's interesting when I reflect back on, early in my career, I started out on the front line as a ride operator. It was the day after I turned 18 years old, and I didn't care what the pay was. I know that I wanted, the experience of being able to do that. You talked about the staffing challenges that the industry has had over the last couple of years, and really wanting to hit that head on. And in 2023, people are asking themselves, I could go be a ride operator at an amusement park, or I can go work the front lines in any attraction, or I could drive for Uber, or I could deliver for DoorDash, or I could do something that allows me to set my own schedule and potentially make more money and do things that I'm not standing outside in 100-degree heat. So the staffing challenges are largely from perhaps friction points that people now have many more options to kind of get around. So I'm curious, as far as really the best response from that, whether it's about career development, whether saying this will give you so much more life experience. Because in the short run, I'm standing outside, it's really hot out, and frustrated people are yelling at me about things that aren't my fault. And that's what our frontline employees go through. But saying no, do that because it'll be better than driving for Uber. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing for sure, it's fun. So those things you mentioned, those are not the exactly fun parts of the job, obviously. And but I think in the end, it's fun. And if you like what you do there, it's actually a job that never feels like a job, because you're in an environment that is always happy, that's always about making people smile. So you're always around happy people. One of the other aspects I would say definitely is people skills. You get to meet even if you drive an Uber, obviously you get to meet different people, but not as many as a roller coaster. If you operate a roller coaster, you see about 1,000 people an hour. So it's also there. You get to meet so many different people, and you get to meet so many different cultures and different backgrounds that only that already learns and teach you so many things that I think is hard to find in another role. But above all, it's fun.
It is fun. It is fun. I started as a ride operator as well, and I can look back on those days very, very fondly and think about the fun that I had, whether it was with other employees or the fun that I had with the guests, or maybe on behalf of the guests. I'm not sure how to put that, but I mean, we made our own fun
at the expense of the guest.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. But I think that all translates into what we get to do now, whether we're, at IAAPA or consulting or building theme parks, building roller coasters, water slides, whatever it is. So I'm curious, kind of thinking back to the young Peter ride operator and thinking about where we are now. What lessons have you taken from that early experience as a ride operator, maybe those first couple of years, that you might still even be using right now?
I think it's those people skills, actually. I think those are developed the most over the years, and I think it's like I said, the differences between cultures, the difference between backgrounds. But in the end, everyone comes to join a park, and they like to have a nice day. I remember very, very, very well from Keukenhof, for example. Keukenhof is one of the biggest tourist attractions in the Netherlands, and it's the well-known flower park, if you don't know the name. It attracts over 1 million guests in just 3 months, so it's quite popular, actually, and it's 60%, 70% is tourists, so outside of the Netherlands. You get to see a lot of different cultures, Chinese, Indians. It's everyone basically around the world, and also with different cultures. For example, where we saw people from India that are usually traveling into Europe are more high-class people in India, where they don't usually are very used to take orders from anyone else. So please step out of the grass or something like that. That was always an issue. But then during that conversation you had with them, they always invited you for the barbecue on the parking lot. So it was so good to see, actually, that even if you have a difference of understanding or a difference of background, that you can connect with each other and get to know each other and have a good time with each other.
So staying on ride operator Peter here for a second, if you could go back in time, Yeah. If you could go back in time and give yourself advice in those early days, what would you tell yourself?
I would say actually, I came across, I never saw it again, but I came across on a quote on LinkedIn. Um, it was many years ago actually already, but it says the scary part of growing up is realizing that the people you look up to were just doing what they thought was right. And I remember from being a ride operator, I was also still in school at that time, and I was learning about leisure management and management styles, and I was very much looking up to my manager at that park. And actually, when I read that sentence, I don't know, it blew my mind for some reason that it kind of hit me in the face. Like even the people you look up to, they go by their gut feeling and they do what they think is right. So why don't you just do the same? That there was so I don't know why that sentence had to be thrown in my face to realize that, but from then on, I don't know, I became way more self-secure and thought about more of what, yeah, working on my gut feeling, especially if you have that industry experience for over 20 years, you know what you're talking about. So go by it. And I think I should have done that earlier, actually. So I think that I would throw that line in my face when I was 16, maybe.
Well, and I think it's good advice for anybody at any level. I appreciate you sharing that, and I hope all of our listeners do as well. I'm curious, Peter. You mentioned earlier that you wanted to be a pilot. So,
Yes.
looking back, like if you weren't in this industry now, what do you think you'd be doing?
I would say pilot. I think I would then apply again and I must say that 17 age was the minimum limit that you can apply. So I did it right away. And of course, you're a teenager, so you're not as mature as you are when you're 23 or 24, maybe. Um, so I think if I applied again, maybe I got through and then got into that system. I must also say, being in this role, you get to travel a lot, and I still like aviation. It's still, yeah, I don't know, it interests me, and I think it's I don't know, I never feel bad when I'm in a plane or I don't know, it always makes me sort of happy. So I think I would then still follow that direction. Yeah.
Yeah. So Peter, we're starting to wrap up here, just a last few minutes left, but is there anything else that perhaps we haven't covered yet, or any message for our audience that you want to make sure that you share that we haven't touched on already?
Ooh, that's a hard one. I think in the end, like I said, I lead a team of 15 people, and they're absolutely a wonderful team, and they do a lot of all the work. I get pushed to be the face usually. But I think if you think of IAAPA and if you think of what we do for industry, just don't forget that it's not only me, it's also a team of 15 very hardworking and passionate people that are supporting the industry because they love it. So for me, that's always important to mention at least, and yeah, I think it's they deserve that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Peter, this has been an amazing conversation. Thank you again for your time. If people wanted to learn more about IAAPA or the EMEA region or get in touch with you directly, where would you send them?
It's very open, actually. My telephone number is all on the web. If you go to iapa.org/EMEA, you enter the EMEA regions page, and actually all our team members are listed there, including me, including our telephone number, our email address. So if you ever want to reach out to us for any reason whatsoever, you're always free to do so. We actually love that. So please do.
Excellent.
Excellent. Peter, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time today. It was just absolutely fantastic getting to talk to you and hear your story and hear all about IAAPA EMEA and the upcoming expo in Vienna. For everyone out there who is watching and listening, just remember, we are all Attraction Pros.
Thanks for listening to the Attraction Pros podcast.
Make sure to subscribe so you can tune in when new episodes release, and even better, please leave us a review on iTunes.
For more information, visit attractionpros.com.